Hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, we're going to be doing a review for Andor, Episode 2, Season 7, Messenger. Who is the Messenger? We will learn that in this episode. Before I get into spoilers, let's talk a little bit spoiler free. So the pattern that we've seen with this 3 episode drops is that the first episode is a big setup. The second one raises the stakes, raises the tension, and then we get a big payoff in the third episode. Now, normally that would make the first one the weakest. So I think they've done some really cool things on this one to add a little bit of layers and world building. Also, give us a few things that Star Wars fans are very familiar with. Throw in, sprinkle in a few names that you may recognize, sprinkle in a few locations that you may recognize. I really, really enjoyed this one. Like, I was geeking out, doing with the Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like I get it. I've seen it. I get that. I know what you're talking about. I know who you are, and I'm glad to see you in this series. This was really fun. I really enjoyed this episode of Andor, and as you know, I do not watch episodes ahead of shooting the video, so I've only seen up to 7. I do have a few theories. Maybe we'll talk about those a little bit as we go on forward. Uh, so let's get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, make sure to come back. Uh, there is no cold open in this episode. I made a note of that because we've gotten cold opens pretty much for every episode. I think for almost every episode. We get a little bit something before we get to see the what year we are in and all that. So it is BBY2. Of course, we're counting down to the big battle of Yavin. Um, I don't think that's what it stands for. It's before Battle of Yavin, but I guess Big Battle of Yavin also fits the BBY acronym. Uh, we are at the Yavin Rebel Base. That really, oh man, that was so much fun. The call sign for the ship that we're following is Shadow 6. That didn't sound familiar to me. But there's the Shadow Ghost. Like there might be some rebels running around. All these timelines are kind of coinciding into a lot of really fun stuff. Uh, we see that Willman is back to Yavin. Will is back to Yavin, and then also Cassian and Biggs have they're together in this like little jungle hideout. All of them are now more part of the rebellion that we are familiar with from Episode 4. Um, which is really cool, really interesting. We noticed that Cassian has an injury. It looks like a blaster burn in his arm, and he's having trouble with it. But it's really fun to see Cassian and Biggs kind of back together in I would call it a safer environment, at least for now, right? Um, Luthen wants Cassian back, and that's why Will's there. But it looks like Luthen is working on his own. He's not working with the Yavin forces. He's not working with the main group of rebels that we know. So that's also very interesting because now Luthen feels a little bit more like Saw Gerrera, where they're kind of like these. They want to take down the Empire, but they're not playing ball with the rest of the rebels. Maybe they don't agree on the ideology or everything. Like they're not completely on board. So that's really interesting as well. Um, we then go to the Gorman, back to Gorman. Heavy Imperial presence there, way more than whatever we left in a year. So many things have changed, and we see that the media is speaking of attacks by terrorists. So we know that the Empire has probably been causing these things to be able to justify them having a heavier presence, heavier military presence. But we'll get to see there that maybe it's not the best. Maybe it's not the best forces that are being brought to Gorman. Luthen, his mission is to target Deidre. He knows that she's in Gorman, and Deidre is in Gorman. We do see her there. We see her talking to Patergas, I think that's his name, who's advising Deidre like the Emperor is aware of everything you're doing. Gorman's become very important because of that mineral. Krennic is currently with the general. Like he just keeps throwing out all these names, which is really fun. But I sometimes I don't know if these Imperials are like very like they're actually trying to work together or they're just all out with their own agenda to move upwards closer to the Emperor. But it looks like Patergaz really is rooting for Deidre, as at least from what it seems. Just because of the actor who they cast, he was in Game of Thrones. He was a very Weasley character there. I have my doubts. I think I don't want to typecast any actors, but yeah. Uh, we see they bring in somebody called Captain Kaido. That name did not ring any bells for me, but you might be more familiar with Captain Kaido. He's brought in to handle things because things are about to get really serious and probably very messed up at Gorman. Like, feels like the Empire. If you remember that meeting from the first batch of episodes, they talked about they did not want to utilize their brute strength to do what they're about to do, but it looks like they feel the Empire feels like they are at a standstill, where now they've done enough to justify bringing that brute force to finalize their plans with Gorman. um we also see Cyril. He goes to confront Deidre about everything. Cyril's a very interesting character. He's had a very cool arc, I think, over the really both seasons. But now every time they talk, I wonder, like, is Deidre really, does she really like him? Are they really in a relationship? Are they really looking out for each other? Or is she just using Cyril? And now I also wonder about Cyril. There's a scene later on where Cyril runs into, I believe it's Enza, one of the Gorman rebels. I'll call them because they're not the main rebels. Um, and it looks like they might have had, like, maybe he formed a bond with this other person. I don't know. It's pretty complicated, which is what I love about the show. Like, it doesn't give you everything. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of interpretation until the things are really revealed. That makes it very interesting. But yeah, we then catch up with Mon Mothma in the Senate. We didn't really get to see her last at the end of last season, or sorry, at the end of the last batch of episodes. But finally, the Gore senator, he comes to talk to her about how he messed up. He should have, he wishes he could turn back the clock and accept her help back from a year ago. But now it feels like they're at the limit. I feel like he's about to do something stupid. Because it almost felt like he was saying goodbye to Mon Mothma. In this in this conversation, things are also very secure now, very tight at the Imperial, at the Senate. So obviously this all comes from the Empire and their presence there, trying to keep the Senate as their puppet. But I mean, you've heard Palpatine say it, "I am the Senate." So like, I don't think it really feels like they're just spinning the wheels there. We see a resistance meeting for the people of Gore, like all, and I heard the creators talk about like how there was a bit of an influence of like the French and these European nations. Even in their wear, they wear the little berets and of course the textile. So like, it's really interesting how they draw in things from the real world to kind of make us familiar and like with what's going on. But they're in bad spirits. They are probably on the brink of their planet being destroyed. Maybe they don't know that exactly what's going to happen. We know that as the viewer. But yeah, things are not going to go very well. Then we get to probably my favorite sequence, my favorite scene of the episode. We see that there is a force healer in Yavin, and Cassian doesn't like this, right? Because Marva didn't like force healers, or didn't like one force healer a long time ago. So he's also very wary. And you have to remember that for a lot of these people, the force isn't a real thing. Like, even even to people that may have been in the presence of it, they still don't believe in it, right? Han Solo did not believe in it when we first met him in episode 4. So obviously, Cassian thinks of it like it's probably a scam, but they have a force healer in the base of Javin 4. We see them, they're helping somebody heal. And the coolest part about the sequence is that the healer, she felt Cassian from across the yard. She was drawn to Cassian. And she, she checks out, well, she guesses where his wound is. She checks it out. She can feel, there was a sequence where she just kind of feels Cassian's resolve. And she, like, I don't know, there was is a really weird interaction because it's hard to explain the force, right? But I think, I don't know the name of the performer, excellent work performing this, like this feeling of doubt, and also encountering something that you, even as a force user, because not obviously not, this is not somebody who has knowledge of the force like a Jedi would or somebody like that. This is a different level. It's very, it's, you remember, if you guys remember Chirrut from the movie, he had a very different approach to the force as well. But you know, this kind of freaks out Cassian, but the healer and Bix have a conversation. She's the one that tells him he is the messenger. So it's really fun. Like, it just, for anyone that was kind of waiting for any type of force stuff to happen in Andor, I think this is the most we're gonna get of it. And then of course, as the viewer, knowing what ends up happening later on in Rogue One, and what part Cassian has to do and all that stuff, like, it just adds so many layers on top of it. Tony Gilroy just really killing it, adding those little details that I loved it. I love that sequence. It was so much fun. We didn't see Draven. If you remember Draven from Rogue One, he's in Yavin at the time. He dresses down Cassian because Cassian's still kind of behaving like a privateer instead of, like, you know, somebody who's actually part of this rebellion. And they don't, I like that the rebel forces are now more structured now. In these past few years, they've gained some structure. I mean, we've seen it in Rebels. We know how organized they really are now, and we see it at the beginning. We know this is only a couple years before the beginning of Episode 4, so we know how organized they really are now. Then we see Val, who goes back to talk to Bix about Cassian about the same thing, just to make sure that, you know, that they are going to fight for the rebels, that they're going to stick around, that they, you know, Cassian needs to lead as part of this rebellion. She does name drop General Dodona, and then of course Draven from earlier. um that, yeah, that was, those are just really neat Easter eggs for anybody that recognizes any of those names. And then lastly, we see that Cassian accepts Luthen's mission and goes with Willman back to Gorman to attempt to assassinate Deidre. That's probably what these two episodes are coming are going to be all about. You know, the plans to do that and maybe try to escape from there with all the heavy Imperial presence, or maybe even the planet being destroyed and just trying to escape with their lives. I don't really know. I think the other thing I mentioned, I mentioned that I had a theory. I feel like Bix is going to be a casualty in order to try to get Deidre, and that's, you know, because we know that eventually Bix will probably be separated from Cassian in some form or fashion, and probably lost as well. So, uh, one fun thing in the hotel at Gorman, when Cassian checks in, the bellhop that he talked to, I guess in the last set of episodes a year ago, recognizes him but doesn't say anything. He's now working behind the desk, and kind of gives him a wink of, like, you know, like, I feel like he knows he's there to help. So he's kind of helping him out as well, saying like, you will be reported to the Empire because you didn't check in or whatever. You don't have the right credentials because he's undercover as a reporter this time around. Um, and then as Cassian is trying to get things set up in his room, he does realize that there are some stormtroopers on top of the building. So just to demonstrate how heavy the Imperial presence is now compared to a year ago when he was there as the fabric merchant or whatever, the designer. So yeah, great stuff. I mean, we were on Javin. We were in Yavin. Like, what more can you want as a Star Wars fan? And you get to see all the cool costumes from, like, the Rebels. You get to see astromechs. You get to see other droids. You get to see other species walking around in their pilot uniforms. It's so much fun. I can't wait to see, like, I watch new rock stars do breakdowns, and they are gonna have a field day with this one because there's so much stuff. Like, I didn't have enough time to make notes and all the details, and that's really not what I do here in the channel anyways. I leave that to the professionals. I just want to talk about how I'm feeling about the show, and right now I'm feeling great. So let's close this out because I want to go watch episode 8. But if you watch episode 7, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe. Stay tuned for the rest of the episodes for this week of Andor. And as always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bells. You know, when we go live, that is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here in the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye bye.